back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, October 22nd. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to click that super chat button to create a super chat of any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it, and it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So, let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to recap both games on Monday Night Football, Ravens and the Buccaneers, and the Cardinals and the Chargers. So we'll get into those games. The Ravens winning 41-31 over the Buccaneers. And then in the game that was an ESPN Plus exclusive, the Cardinals picked up a win on a last-second field goal, 17-15 over the Chargers, which I was a little surprised about. I thought the Chargers, I had the Chargers winning, but, of course, in the NFL, you just never know, especially this year. So let's get into it, shall we? So we'll start off with the Ravens and the Buccaneers game. So got off to a fast start for the Bucs. They were up by 10. They were winning 10-0. And you felt good. The offense was moving the ball. Baker Mayfield connected with Mike Evans for a touchdown. They kicked a field goal, but you knew the Ravens were going to get it going, and that's exactly what ended up happening. Their offense has been playing really well. And Lamar Jackson, I mean, that was an MVP performance last night, really was. But the Buccaneers, though, we'll get into it, but not only was this a loss, but it was also a loss when it comes to injuries as well. So, the Bucs, they went 8 plays, 70 yards down the field, and Baker Mayfield connected with Mike Evans for a touchdown. Mike Evans was banged up coming into this game. 25-yard touchdown, and so that made it 7-0. The Ravens then punted. The Bucs, they sacked Lamar Jackson on back-to-back plays. Then they went 11 plays, 75 yards down the field, 6 minutes of time of possession, and they ended up kicking a field goal. Now, actually, what ended up happening was Mike Evans aggravated his hamstring injury, and he was ruled out immediately. Went to the locker room, and they were down their top wide receiver. So, and then that kind of changed the momentum of the game, because then the Ravens really started to get it going. Lamar Jackson connected with Mark Andrews, who had a big game for a touchdown to make it 10-7. Then Baker Mayfield threw a pick. Ravens turned that into a touchdown. That was set up by a 59-yard reception by Rashad Bateman, who also had a good game. And then Lamar Jackson. So there was a penalty. So Lamar Jackson scored a rushing touchdown, but there was a holding, and Troy Aikman didn't really like the call, so they got pushed back. But then on the very next play, Lamar Jackson connected with Justice Hill for an 18-yard touchdown, so that made it 14-10. Baker threw another pick, and that led to a Justin Tucker field goal of 28 yards. And then, we went into the half, and the Bucs, the Ravens were up 17-10. Then to start off the second half, Ravens came out. Justin Tucker kicked another field goal, 52-yarder, so that made it 20-10. The Bucs did get into field goal range, but Chase McLaughlin missed a 55-yard field goal. And then the Ravens, they turned that into a touchdown. Lamar Jackson connected with Rashad Bateman for a 49-yard touchdown. The Bucs punted. Derrick Henry, an 81-yard run. It was interesting how he really wasn't being used at certain points during the game, but then he took over, in the second half. Had a receiving touchdown later on. So, yeah, that led to another Mark Andrews touchdown. Then the Ravens fumbled. The Bucs turned that into a touchdown. Baker connected with Rashad White, so that made it 34-18. Then the Ravens, they answered with a touchdown. Lamar Jackson connected with Derrick Henry for a 13-yard touchdown. Bucs scored another touchdown. Bucky Irving from 1 yard out. They actually recovered the onside kick. Turned that into a touchdown. Baker connected with Rashad White. Ravens punted. And then towards the end of the game, Chris Godwin for 21 yards, but he ends up getting hurt. Dislocated his ankle, so it looks like he is out for the rest of the season. And Todd Bowles, he's been hearing it for that. Because, I mean, the Bucs were going to lose this game, did lose the game. There was really no chance that they were going to come back. And to leave your starters out there and he ends up getting hurt, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. But he, defended it and said, the guys want to be out there. But it's just not a good look. And Chris Godwin was having an unbelievable season, and now he's out for the year. Mike Evans, we'll see how long he's out for, but the Bucs are now down their top two wide receivers. And looking at the stats of the game, Lamar Jackson, 17-22, 281 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. The Ravens ran the ball for 244 yards, the number one rushing team coming in. Derrick Henry, 169 yards on the ground, a receiving touchdown. Lamar Jackson had 52 yards on the ground. Rashad Bateman, 4 receptions for 121 yards and a touchdown. He's been looking good at times during the year. And the Ravens did give him a new contract, and, last night played really well. Justice Hill, 3 receptions for 44 yards and a touchdown. Mark Andrews, 4 for 41 and 2 touchdowns. Derrick Henry, like I said, receiving touchdown. Ravens defense had 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble. Justin Tucker went 2 for 2 on field goals, 5 for 5 on extra points. And then for the Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield, 370 yards passing, 31 for 45, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Bucs ran the ball for 125 yards. Bucky Irving had a rushing touchdown. The leading rusher was Rashad White. Cade Otton, he was getting banged around last night, but he was their leading receiver, 8 receptions for 100 yards. Rashad White, 6 for 71 and 2 touchdowns. Chris Godwin, 7 for 65. Mike Evans, 1 for 25 and a touchdown. Bucky Irving, 3 for 54. Bucs defense, only the 2 sacks in the beginning of the game, and that was it. So they dropped to 4-3. They'll be playing the Falcons next week. Big NFC South matchup. The Falcons coming off of that loss against the Seahawks. I can't figure out the Falcons. And for the Buccaneers, I mean, you're down your top 2 wide receivers. I mean, they're going to have to figure it out. Baker Mayfield did not play well last night. I know he threw for a ton of yards, but, once you lost Mike Evans, I mean, the game completely changed. And now you're going to be without Chris Godwin, too. So we'll see. They got Jalen McMillan. They got Trey Palmer, Sterling Shepard. I mean, those guys are going to have to step up. In the running game, I mean, at least you got the 3 running backs. You're going to have to lean on your running game, too. So they got the Falcons, and like I said, Chiefs after that, and then the Niners. So they got tough games coming up on the schedule. They're going to have to win at least one of them. And if you lose to the Chiefs and the Niners, you beat the Falcons, you go 5-5, I mean, you're in good shape. I mean, by no means does this mean the Bucs are done. But they are definitely in trouble. And for the Ravens, they just continue to roll. They're 5-2 now on top of the AFC North, and they will be taking on the Browns next week. So they look really good. We'll see what happens next week. I'll be seeing them in person. So let's get to the other game, shall we? Now, this was a lot different. Really didn't get a chance to watch it just because I didn't have access to ESPN+, believe it or not. So I actually was listening to the Cardinals radio broadcast at certain points during the night. But it got off to an interesting start because Kyler Murray threw a pick, And then James Conner ended up forcing the fumble on Tart, who picked it off. And then it ended up being recovered by Michael Wilson. So the Cardinals got it back, but they ended up punting. Then Justin Herbert throws a bomb to Jalen Reagor for 41 yards, and the ball gets knocked out, and it goes through the back of the end zone, and that ends up being a touchback. So Chargers don't get any points. Then the Cardinals punted, and then Cameron Dicker, who had a great game, kicked a 59-yarder, so that put the Chargers on the board. They were up 3-0. Cardinals then went 10 plays, 79 yards down the field, and Kyler connected with Greg Dortch for a 5-yard touchdown, so that made it 7-3 Cardinals. More punts, and it was 7-6 at the half. Dicker kicked a 50-yard field goal. Then to open up the third quarter, Chargers punted, Cardinals turned it over on downs, then Dicker kicked yet another field goal, a 28-yarder. All field goals for the Chargers in this game. And then Kyler Murray, a 44-yard touchdown run, so that put the Cardinals up 14-9. Interesting decision by Harbaugh in the fourth quarter. So it was 4th and 3, and he elects to go for the field goal rather than going for it and trying to get 7 on the drive. They ended up taking the lead later on, but I don't know. I feel like they should have went for it, but they didn't. Dicker kicked another field goal that made it 14-12. Cardinals punted, and then Dicker kicked another field goal to make it 15-14. Cardinals get the ball back. Kyler avoided a sack. He was able to hit James Conner for 33 yards. Then Conner, another 5-yard game, another 6-yard game. And then they were saying on the broadcast, on the Cardinals radio broadcast, like maybe, James Conner, they'll let him score and then they'll get the ball back. But Cardinals did not give the Chargers an opportunity to possess the ball. Kyler ended up kneeling it down, and then Ryland kicked a game-winning 32-yard field goal. And the Cardinals improved to 3-4 on the season. Justin Herbert had a good game, 27-39, 349 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. J.K. Dobbins only 40 yards on the ground. Will Dissly was their leading receiver. He had 8 receptions for 81 yards. Joshua Palmer had a couple of nice catches, 4 receptions for 63 yards. Led McConkey, 5-46. A couple of fumbles in the game, like I said, for the Chargers. No sacks for the Chargers in this game. Kyler Murray went 14 of 26, 145 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. James Conner had a good game, 19 carries for 101 yards. Kyler, the 44-yard touchdown. He had 64 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown, of course. They ran the ball for almost 200 yards, and this is against a good Chargers run defense, and they had their way against them. Trey McBride was the leading receiver, 5 receptions for 51 yards. Conner had 2 for 51. Cardinals defense, 3 sacks in the game. They improved to 3-4. Chargers dropped to 3-3, and we'll get to the NFC West later in the show, but yeah, it's close. The division is close. So, that's where that is the recap there. 17-15, Cardinals pick up the win, Chargers the loss. Let me know what you guys think, though, about these games. What were your takeaways from them? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we will talk about the Jets-Steelers game from Sunday night. We'll talk about Russell Wilson's performance. We'll talk about the Jets as they continue to struggle. So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about the Jets-Steelers game from the other night. Steelers picking up the win 37-15. And they improved to 5-2 on the season. Jets dropped to 2-5. And this was the first game of the reunion between Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. Davante Adams only had 30 yards receiving in this game. I mean, you figured Davante's going to have some big games as we move along here, but yeah, quiet day for him. Not a good game for Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall played well in this game. He ended up being their leading receiver, but yeah, this was a mess for the Jets. So Russell Wilson, he started for the first time this year. I mean, I honestly thought, Fields, got them off to a 4-2 start. You thought he was going to, continue to be the starter. But Mike Tomlin, elected to go back to Russell Wilson. And, Russ played okay. I don't think he was spectacular, but, he did what he was supposed to do. Didn't turn the ball over. And, the Steelers, they also leaned on that running game as well. The Jets continue to struggle against the run. And, yeah, let's kind of go through it. So the Steelers, they scored on their first drive. They got the ball to start the game. You had a 15-yard reception by Darnell Washington, the other tight end. Najee Harris had an 18-yard run on this drive. Got down the field to the Jets' 28, and Boswell kicked a 46-yard field goal. He continues to have a good year. So the Steelers were up 3-0. Back-to-back punts by the Jets and the Steelers. And then the Jets, they go 9 plays, 82 yards. They put together a nice drive. Rodgers connected with Breece Hall for 18 yards, another 13 to Breece, another 12 to Garrett Wilson, and then Breece Hall from 13 yards out scores a touchdown to put the Jets up 7-3. See, and the thing is, like, there are times where you see the Jets moving the ball and you're like, wow, look at the offense, looks pretty good. But the consistency is not there. Then more punts. We go to the second quarter, another punt by the Jets. Steelers put together another field goal drive, a 44-yard reception by George Pickens. And that was a pass that maybe got underthrown a little bit. But you know what? You're throwing it up to George Pickens, and he came down with the ball. And they got into field goal range. Boswell, a 29-yard field goal. So that made it 7-6. Then the Jets put together a touchdown drive. They go 6 plays, 72 yards down the field. It was set up by a 57-yard reception by Breece Hall. It was kind of similar to the play last year against the Giants, where he scored a touchdown, but he went the other way this time. Yeah, that set the Jets up, and Rodgers connected with Tyler Conklin, a nice little play fake by Rodgers. I mean, that's one of his signature moves. And there was a penalty on the extra point because the Steelers, they love to try to block kicks, and they did do that later in the game. So then the Jets elected to go for 2, and Rodgers connected with Garrett Wilson. So that made it 15-6, and you're saying, okay, all right, the Jets, they're up by 9. They're looking good right now. Steelers then punted, and this was kind of when the momentum shifted. So the Steelers punted, Jets have the ball, they're driving, and then Rodgers throws an interception to Bishop. It was a great play by Bishop. He's trying to hit Garrett Wilson, and then the Steelers turned that into a touchdown. Russell Wilson connected with George Pickens. So it was 15-13 at the half. The Jets did not score ever again after that. They punted to start off the second half. Steelers then, on their first drive of the second half, a Boswell field goal, so that made it 16-15. And then I really don't know what happened on this play. So Rodgers has Garrett Wilson wide open down the sideline. He hits him, and for some reason, it just ricochets off of Garrett Wilson. He's not able to corral it. Gets batted up in the air, and Bishop picks it off again, and he almost returned it for a pick 6. Davante Adams tackled him at the 1. And, yeah, the Steelers then turned that into a touchdown. Russell Wilson, a quarterback sneak for a touchdown, so that made it 23-15 Steelers. Then the Jets, they got into field goal range, but it ended up getting blocked. It was a 35-yard field goal attempt by Greg Zuerlein, who's had a rough few weeks. And, so the Jets didn't get any points out of that. And then the Steelers score another touchdown. Russell Wilson hits Van Jefferson for a 4-yard touchdown, so that made it 30-15. Jets then turned it over on downs. And then the Steelers, they basically just, took it down to the end of the game. Najee Harris actually scored on 4th and 2 with 30 seconds left in the game, basically. And, so that's why. It really should have been 30-15, but they tacked on another touchdown. So, that made it 37-15. And that was it. Russell Wilson, we'll go through the Jets first. So, Rodgers, 24-39, 276 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, continues to throw picks. The Jets only ran the ball for 54 yards. Breece Hall, 38 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Like I said, was good in the receiving game. He was their leading receiver, 6 receptions for 103 yards. Garrett Wilson, 5 for 61. Allen Lazard, 4 for 58. Devontae Adams, 3 for 30. Mike Williams, 1 for 15. Tyler Conklin, 4 for 7 and a touchdown. The Jets defense only 1 sack in this game, and they continue to struggle against the run. Steelers ran the ball for 149 yards. Najee Harris had 102 yards on the ground in the touchdown. Jaylen Warren, 44. Looked more like his old self because, he's been banged up. George Pickens, a good game, 5 receptions for 111 yards and a touchdown. The Steelers defense, they only had 1 sack in the game. But, they pick up the win and they move to 5-2. So, Russell Wilson and his performance. So, switch some things around here. Like I said, I wouldn't say he was great, but, he put up solid numbers. 264 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. The Jets defense is not as good as it once was. Like I said, did what he was supposed to do. And, now, for the moment, Mike Tomlin looks like a genius for going to Russell Wilson. He's definitely limited. There were times where I thought, he could have took off with it and ran, but he didn't do that. So you wonder, is the calf still an issue, or is it just, this is who Russell Wilson is now? Because what made Russell Wilson special was him extending plays. This is a different Russell Wilson that we are seeing, but picked up the win. Look, the Steelers are 5-2 right now. They are stacking up those wins before they get to the tough part of their schedule. And they take on the Giants next week, and that could be a trap game, but the Steelers should win. They should win because for some reason the Giants play better on the road than they do at home. So, the Steelers got to be careful. I'm just saying. Look, and I still think the Steelers will win, but for some reason the Giants they'll pull a game out that you don't expect. Like, look, they won in Seattle. So, but they should win that game, go to 6-2, and then you take on that tough part of your schedule. So, and if Russ keeps doing that and the Steelers continue to play good defense, they got Alex Highsmith back, which was huge for the defense, because now everyone's focus is not going to be on T.J. Watt. Now you got to worry about Highsmith. So you got to like that. The running game continues to produce. So, and I still would like to see the Steelers add another receiver. They do need that. Pat Freiermuth made some good plays in this game. Of course, George Pickens, a good game as well. So, that was a good win for the Steelers. But for the Jets, it's more of the same. It's just they put together good drives, and you're thinking, okay, this is where they're going to start clicking, and then it just doesn't happen. And, they were up 15-6. You thought, okay, this could be the beginning of a run for them, and then it all turned. And, look, it's not just one aspect of this game, but or just one aspect of the team. It's a lot of things. The defense is not playing well. Rodgers is not playing great. The defense cannot stop the run, and they had some guys banged up in the secondary, and that made a difference because George Pickens had a big game. Coaching is a big thing. And people talking about this, that how Ulbrich, now he's the head coach, he's paying less attention to the defense, and now the defense is struggling because of that. That's part of the reason. The defense was already struggling, but now it's, you take Saleh out of the equation. Ulbrich now is the head coach, and it's like his main focus can't be on the defense. He's paying less attention to that, and the team is suffering because of that. Look, I don't think Robert Saleh was a good coach. However, I do think letting him go in the middle of the season, it didn't really make sense to me. I think what they should have did was, which they ended up doing anyways, is you demote Hackett and you bring in another play caller. And you keep Saleh. But they didn't do that. And, this season is spiraling out of control now for the Jets. And look, I get it. This was a gamble I was taking by saying, hey, look, they have a lot of talent on this team. Rodgers comes back. The offense will look better, hopefully, and they'll be a good team. But it's not the case. It's going the complete opposite, and I'm gonna own it. And it's unfortunate because I'd like to see Rodgers at least go out on some sort of a high note, and not go out, like it looks like he's gonna go out, which is just the Jets not having a good year, even with Davante Adams in the picture. I mean, the problem is there's too many issues on this team, and they did not have a good coaching staff coming into this year, and surprisingly, unsurprisingly, now with Saleh being out, it got worse, because now you're taking someone's full attention away from the defense. And it's just, again, you go back to Brady and Stafford and Peyton Manning. When they went to their new teams, there was structure there. The Buccaneers had a good defense. Bruce Arians is a good head coach. I mean, the relationship between Brady and Arians maybe wasn't the best, but it worked. They won a Super Bowl. There was structure there. There was structure with the Rams. They did the swap with Jared Goff for Stafford. Stafford's going into a team where you have Sean McVay, who's one of the best head coaches in the NFL. You got a good defense. You got weapons. And then Peyton going to the Broncos. They had weapons. John Fox, he didn't win a Super Bowl. They went to a Super Bowl together. And Peyton Manning had one of the greatest seasons of all time, with John Fox as the head coach. There was structure on those teams. With the Jets, Rodgers is came to a team where the head coach was unproven, wasn't great, and and for him too. He's coming off of, before that happened. He was coming off of not a great year in Green Bay last year, and then he tears his Achilles, and now this is the do-over, and the do-over hasn't gone great so far. So it's just there's a lot of problems with the Jets, and it's not just him. He's got to play better. I don't think the second interception was his fault. I don't know what happened with Garrett Wilson on that play. Rodgers hits him in stride, and it's somehow, I couldn't believe it. I was like, what happened? How did it get intercepted? It's not looking great. And Breece Hall, he was good in the receiving game. He was their leading receiver, but he only had 30 yards on the ground rushing. So, and it's a lot of checkdowns. It was just a lot of dump offs and checkdowns. It's just, Rodgers is not throwing the ball down the field, really. Maybe with Adams, another game under his belt, maybe we see more of that, but I'm like, how are they going to move? They're not moving the ball. They did in the beginning, but it's just, again, it was to Breece Hall. Breece Hall's creating the big plays. You bring in Davante Adams, Lazard, Garrett Wilson. Where are these big plays with the receivers? It's just they weren't there. So, and there were some times where Rodgers missed some open guys. There were guys open and he just didn't see it. So I don't know. It's tough to watch. It really is. But that's where the Jets are. They're 2-5. Is their season over? No, but it's trending that way. And the Bills, they continue to win. So We'll see. But the Jets do have a light schedule. So, if you could stack up some wins there, maybe you get yourself back in this thing. But it's just, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. If you remember, Rodgers last year in Green Bay, they were struggling. And then they got hot at the end of the year. The Lions did end up beating them, but to end their playoff hopes. But, maybe we see something like that happen. I don't know. I don't know. I don't really I think the problems that they have, some of them are just, you're not going to be able to fix it in season. Now, I didn't even bring up Hassan Reddick, so he's supposedly going to report. But, how much is that really going to help at this point? So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So before we go to break, let me just remind you guys once again, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the Super Chat button in the chat to help create a Super Chat of any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it, and it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link, which once again disappears as I talk about this, by going to the link, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we'll talk about the other New York team, and that is the New York Giants. Saquon Barkley, how did he do in his return to MetLife Stadium? We'll discuss it. So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about Saquon Barkley and his return to MetLife Stadium as the Eagles defeat the Giants 28-3, which was, if you remember, the score of the Super Bowl with the Falcons and the Patriots. And Patriots came back. The Giants were not coming back from 28-3. Yeah, it was pretty much, I'm not surprised with how it went. I thought the Giants, could have been, were going to be competitive in this game. And, there were just punts in the first quarter. And the defense was getting to Jalen Hurts. What did the defense finish with? They finished with 5 sacks on the day. So the defense showed up. However, the Giants do not have a competent offense. They just don't. Daniel Jones on the day, he finished 14 of 21 for 99 yards and actually got taken out of the game, and they put in Drew Lock, who went 3 for 8 for 6 yards. Giants only ran the ball for 76 yards. Malik Neighbors made his return. He had 4 receptions for 41 yards. The Giants just have no offense. Dexter Lawrence actually leads the league in sacks right now, I believe. He has 9, and he's a defensive tackle. 9 sacks. Stud. Brian Burns a sack in this game. He's a stud. The defense, and again, that is something that I said, if you're a Giant fan, you at least can be excited about the defense. The problem is, you have an offense that is a complete 180 of what the defense is. But let's get into Saquon Barkley. So Saquon Barkley basically did what he was going to do, and that's just run all over the Giants. Nick Sirianni, there was a clip. So Nick Sirianni was talking to him saying, hey, you could, your career high, you're approaching that. Do you want to, you want to get that? And he said, no, let the young guys continue to play or go and play. So, I mean, that was definitely a selfless thing, not selfish, selfless, okay, by Saquon. But, Saquon torched the Giants. 17 carries, 176 yards, and a touchdown. The Eagles ran all over the Giants in this game. Almost 300 yards rushing for the Eagles. They had 269 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. Now, 2 of them were courtesy of the tush push, but still, the Eagles ran all over them. And then, of course, and this happened a couple years ago on 4th down. The Eagles went for it on 4th down at one point, and A.J. Brown scored a touchdown. It was on 4th and 2. I think it was this one. Yeah, it was 4th and 3, and Hurts connected with A.J. Brown for a 41-yard touchdown. That was in the second quarter. The first touchdown, you had a 55-yard run by Saquon Barkley, and then a 3-yard run by Saquon Barkley for a touchdown. So, yeah, the Eagles were up 14-0. The Giants actually, scored some points before the end of the first half, believe it or not. Greg Joseph actually, believe it or not, made a field goal. So that made it 14-3, a 38-yard field goal. And, so 14-3 at the half. So by no means was this game over yet. But, again, the Giants just could not score. More punts to start the second half. And Hurts, his first rushing touchdown. So that made it 21-3. And then it was 28-3. Barkley had a 41-yard run. And then, on 4th and goal, they went for it, the Eagles. With the tush push, they got it. And then there was just more punts. The Eagles, by no means, are playing great. Saquon Barkley right now is their best player. It's good that they have A.J. Brown back. Devontae Smith, he only had 1 reception for -2 yards. But, yeah, Saquon Barkley right now, he's been the MVP of the team. He's got 658 rushing yards on the season and 5 touchdowns. He's been as advertised. Jalen Hurts only went 10 of 14 for 114 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. So, I mean, I expect more out of him. He hasn't been great this year. He just has not been great. I mean, the Eagles are 4-2, but I don't know. I expect more out of Jalen Hurts. And next week they take on the Bengals in Cincy. It's going to be a tough game. Giants, they take on the Steelers. And we talked about this in the production meeting. People should be fired because of this move, letting Saquon Barkley walk. And, look at what he did. Look, I would have liked for them to have kept Saquon. But, had they kept Saquon, I mean, the Giants are still going to be in the same position that they're in right now. And the Giants improved the offensive line this offseason. What's unfortunate now is, Andrew Thomas is out for the year, their left tackle. Out for the year. And you could tell that the Giants missed him because they could not protect Daniel Jones. But Daniel Jones also is not a very good quarterback. Eagles defense, they finished with 8 sacks on the day. So, again, I thought maybe the Giants, and like I said, you know what, at certain points they were competitive, but it got out of hand. It got out of hand because the Giants cannot generate any points. And if you think that Saquon Barkley would make a huge difference on this team this year, you're mistaken because the Giants don't have a quarterback. They don't. Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback. Now, maybe if he went to a better system, if Daniel Jones went to, let's say, the 49ers, he would look a lot better there than he does with the Giants. But he just takes too long to process things, and just watching the game. I mean, I had so where I was at, we had DirecTV, and, I had all the games on. So, every game is in its own little box. So I was paying more attention to some of the better games, like the Lions and the Vikings, like the Packers and the Texans. And then, I would, keep looking over at the Giants. But it's just a lot of checkdowns. They don't push the ball down the field. You're not going to win football games with an offense like that. And Brian Dable was brought in because he was an offensive guy. Now, I do think if you have a better quarterback in place, things look different. But I mean, where is the season going for the Giants? I mean, again, they win this huge game on the road in Seattle, and you think, oh, maybe, let's see if they could put something together. They're going up against a bad defense in the Bengals. They only put up 7 points. Daniel Jones has not thrown a touchdown pass. You ready for this? And you probably already know. He has not thrown a touchdown pass at home, at MetLife Stadium, since 2022. That's how long it's been. 2022. Aaron Rodgers was still in Green Bay. Tom Brady was still playing football. What are we doing? And we'll see if he ends up starting next week, but I feel like at some point you're going to have to pull the plug. And maybe you start Drew Lock, and maybe you see Tommy Cutlets again. I don't think you could keep trotting Daniel Jones out there. But either way, like if the Giants win some meaningless games here, because this season's pretty much over, you're only hurting your draft positioning. And the Giants have holes on this team. Quarterback is the major thing. And paying Daniel Jones really set this team back. Because they thought, all right, well, he won a playoff game. Let's pay him. Because that's a more important position than a running back. And that really has set them back. Really, the pick in general, Dave Gettleman picking Daniel Jones, that set this franchise back. It did. The Giants just continued to make bad decisions. And I still think, though, that with this defense, and if they could figure out the quarterback situation, they could be a more competitive team. But right now, it's not going to happen. And especially now when you lose your left tackle, who is probably your best player on offense, honestly, outside of Malik Neighbors. That just changed the whole offensive line. The offensive line actually has been good this year. It has. But it doesn't help when you have a quarterback that just can't seem to get out of his own way. And again, it's not like the Eagles are this juggernaut. They really have not been a juggernaut this year. They barely beat the Browns. They're not as good as maybe I thought they could be. I mean, Saquon Barkley's been great. Don't get me wrong. But, Jalen Hurts is not playing well. It's just, I don't know. The Eagles are not, they're 4-2. Give them credit. But it's just, again, I don't view them as a top team right now. I don't. Right now, the Commanders of all teams is in first place in the division. And I thought they were finishing in last. So, I was wrong about that. So, yeah, I mean, listen, I don't... The Giants didn't want to overpay for a running back. The Giants had other needs that they needed to address. But it is a bad look. It is a bad look. And it doesn't surprise me that Saquon was able to do this. Not one bit. Not one bit. Not one bit. He wanted this. And, I mean, to the Giant fans that are burning his jersey in the parking lot, I mean, come on, guys. What, really? I'm happy that he's on a better team. It's just unfortunate that it's with the Eagles, a rival. But the Eagles are a better team than the Giants. I know I just said that they haven't really impressed me, but he's running behind a much better offensive line, and this team can make the playoffs. The Giants, with Saquon, they're not making the playoffs. They're not going anywhere. And they'd be wasting another year of Saquon's prime, because he's still in his prime. I mean, now with the Eagles, I mean, it's, his prime is going to be extended. I mean, look at Derrick Henry last night. Derrick Henry's 30 years old. And that's old for a running back. Saquon's not 30 yet. Saquon's still got some very good years left if he continues to run behind this offensive line. The Giants were not going to offer him that. The Giants if they would have kept Saquon, they would not have been able to sign some of the guys that they got to improve the offensive line. So he would have been running behind the same offensive line that he's been running behind his whole Giants career, which is not a very good one. So I'm still okay with them letting go of Saquon. I am. It's just, you go back a couple years ago, maybe they should have prioritized signing Saquon and, again, telling Daniel Jones, continue to prove it. Because, yes, he did win that playoff game, but it was against a very bad defense in the Vikings. And what did he throw? Only 21. What did he throw? 21 touchdown passes? How many touchdown passes did Daniel Jones throw? Actually, I don't even think it was that. I gotta look up Daniel Jones' stats from a couple of years ago. I mean, he did have the rushing touchdowns. I get it. But, yeah, I said 21. Yeah, forget that. 15 touchdown passes to 5 interceptions. 15 touchdown passes. His rookie year is probably his best year. 24 touchdowns he threw. He has not gotten close to that number. And look, I mean, he's gone through a lot in his career. Injuries and, different coaching staffs. It's just, it was a mess. It really was. But he's also just, he's not that good. He's not good. And I know he can make things happen with his legs, but he's not Lamar Jackson. I mean, you see Lamar Jackson last night. Daniel Jones is not even close to that. Not even close. And look at Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has gotten better as a passer. That throw to Bateman last night for the touchdown. Daniel Jones is not doing that. Even though he kind of did a couple weeks ago with Darius Slayton. But still, I mean, Lamar Jackson is in a different stratosphere than Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones can use his legs. That makes him a weapon. I get it. But it's not like Lamar Jackson. It's just not. But where do you go from here if you're the Giants? I have no idea. And you know what? They're going to find a way to win some meaningless games at the end of the year. That's going to hurt their draft positioning. And, who knows what's going to happen. But they need a new quarterback. They need a new quarterback. And I think another thing is maybe you go out and you draft a running back as well, because supposedly this draft class is loaded with running backs. I mean, it'd be nice to see them get Ashton Genty if they were able to. I don't think they will, but who knows. Continue to build up the back end on the defense. Get another wide receiver. Because I don't know if Darius Slayton is going to be here. How much longer he's going to be here with them. But yeah, they got a lot of issues. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think though about this game or your takeaways from it. I mean, again, not surprised really by what happened here. So we're going to take our next break. When we come back, we will talk about the Commanders and their 40-7 victory over the Panthers, despite Jaden Daniels getting hurt in this game. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about the Commanders and their win over the Panthers, despite Jaden Daniels getting hurt early on in this game. So he suffered a rib injury. Right now he's considered week to week. They're hopeful that he could play in Week 8 against the Bears. And they moved that game back to a better time slot because we were going to see Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels face off, the first two picks in the draft, but that might not be the case. We might be seeing Marcus Mariota against Caleb Williams. And Marcus Mariota played really well in this game. I know it was against the Panthers, but still. He did play well. So let's kind of go through it. Commanders actually are now 5-2 on the season. And I had them winning 4 games. So, and again, that was basically off of the fact that, I thought the Eagles and the Cowboys were going to be better. I thought the Giants, would win their matchup against them. They did not. Probably going to get swept by the Commanders. And the Commanders don't have a good defense. But no, the defense has been playing well. They played well in this game. So let's kind of go through it. So the Panthers got the ball to start off the game. And they're driving. They're in Commanders territory. And then Andy Dalton throws a pick 6 to Dante Fowler. A 67-yard return. So that made it 7-0 Commanders. Panthers then punted. Commanders got the ball. Jane Daniels, a 46-yard run. That led to a Seibert field goal. So that made it 23-yarder. That made it 10-0. And then Andy Dalton threw yet another interception. Jaden Daniels. Actually, he did get hurt on that drive. And Mariota came in and played the rest of the way. And like I said, played really well. In the second quarter, Brian Robinson scored an 8-yard touchdown, so that made it 17-0. Panthers turned it over on downs. Commanders scored on another field goal by Seibert, a 49-yard field goal, so that made it 20-0. Panthers punted. Commanders turned that into a touchdown. Mariota connected with Zach Ertz for a 12-yard touchdown. Yes, we got a Marcus Mariota to Zach Ertz touchdown in 2024. So, 27-0 Commanders at the half. Then they scored on their first drive of the second half, 10 plays, 59 yards. Mariota connected with the rookie tight end, Sinat, for a touchdown from 3 yards out. So, 34-0. Then it was 37-0, another Seibert field goal, 31 yards out. And then the Panthers did get on the board. We had a Chuba Hubbard touchdown from 4 yards out, so that made it 37-7. Another Seibert field goal in the fourth quarter. This one was from 29 yards out, and the Commanders win 40-7. Mariota, 18-23, 205 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Brian Robinson Jr., 12 carries for 71 yards and a touchdown. Jane Daniels had 50 yards on the ground. McNichols, 42 yards on the ground. Mariota, 34. Eckler, 17. Commanders running attack, 214 yards in this game and a rushing touchdown. Terry McLaurin, 6 receptions for 98 yards. Zach Ertz, 4 for 40 and a touchdown. Olamide Zaccheaus, he had 4 for 25. De'Ami Brown had 1 for 23. Noah Brown had 1 for 16. Couple of interceptions, like I said. Emmanuel Forbes had the second one. Dante Fowler, he had the pick 6. Commanders defense, 2 sacks. Seibert, 4 for 4 on extra points and 4 for 4 on field goals. As for the Panthers, Andy Dalton went 11 of 16 for 93 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Bryce Young did come in the game. He went 2 for 2, but it was for -4 yards. The Panthers on the ground, 52 yards by Chuba Hubbard. He had a rushing touchdown. Miles Sanders had 34. The leading receiver was the tight end, Ja'Tavion Sanders. He had 6 receptions for 61 yards. Deontay Johnson, 1 for 17. Panthers defense, no sacks in this game, or 1 sack in the game, my apologies. And then Eddie Pinheiro was 1 for 1 on extra points. So, not great for the Panthers. They continue to struggle. That Andy Dalton and that offense. I mean, they looked good against the Raiders, but since then, not so much. And I had to really double check on this. So on the Sleeper app for fantasy, all right, I was looking at his stats. He finished with, I couldn't believe this. Again, I'm still looking just to make sure that this is true. Andy Dalton finished with 0.02 fantasy points. How is that possible? He only had 93 yards passing, and then the 2 picks. I've never seen that. I've never seen that, especially with the guy that pretty much played the whole game. So, Yeah, the Panthers are they're not a good football team. That's a team that has a lot of problems. Defensively, I mean, on the offensive line, they need more. I mean, it's just they got the Broncos next who have a good defense, then maybe the Saints with Derek Carr. And this I cannot believe is an international game. Week 10, you got the Giants and the Panthers playing in Germany. Who made that? Why? But that's what they decided to do. So, but yeah, Panthers are not a good football team. They're at the bottom. And then I mean the Commanders. I mean I give them a lot of credit. And again, I told you why I didn't have them winning a lot of games this year. I didn't think Jane Daniels was going to be a bust or anything like that. I never really came out and was, strong one way or the other. I mean, I definitely didn't think he was going to be a bust. But I just thought that the Commanders, they still had a lot of building that they had to do with this team. They signed some veteran guys this offseason. They signed Eckler. They signed Ertz. They signed Bobby Wagner, Dante Fowler, who, scored the touchdown. But I just still thought, there was still a lot of work to do with this team. However, they are ahead of schedule. They look like one of the best teams. They're a top 10 team right now. I got to see how I'm going to do my top 5 tomorrow. We'll see. But they're a solid team. And, yeah, I mean, got to give them credit. Really got to give them credit. And, I don't think this Jane Daniels injury is going to, be long-term. It doesn't seem like that. But you know what? If Mariota could keep him afloat, he's a veteran guy, and you would have thought Jane Daniels was playing on Sunday with some of the things Mariota was able to do. And Mariota fits the system because he also is a mobile quarterback. So, as long as Jane Daniels is not out long-term, they're going to be okay. But it doesn't seem like that. He's only going to be week to week, it appears. So, but yeah, you got to like the direction they're heading in. I mean, you look at this division, the Eagles have not played great, like I said before. The Cowboys are a mess. And we talked about the Giants already. Commanders are winning this division. They're making the playoffs. I would like to see how they stack up against, some of these other teams. We saw them go up against the Ravens, and they played a good game. They lost a close one, but they played a good game there. Against the Bears, that's, we'll see what they do. The Bears have a good defense. Caleb Williams is playing well, and now he's coming off of a bye, so you would think that he's going to be even better because they've been starting to run the football better. It's going to be a good game, regardless of Mariota. If it's Mariota, if it's Jane Daniels, it's going to be a good game. But yeah, let's kind of look at the Commanders' schedule here. So you got the Bears this week. Then you got the Giants. That should be a win. Home against the Steelers, I mean, look, that could go either way. At the Eagles, that's a Thursday night game. I'm curious to see how that game's going to go. Home against the Cowboys. Home against the Titans. I mean, in my opinion, those should be 2 wins. At the Saints, they should win that game. Home against the Eagles. They played really well against the Eagles last year, and they went 0-2. So now, look at how they're playing this year. I mean, I think they should at least get a split with the Eagles, but we'll see. Home against the Falcons. I mean, the Falcons, I can't figure them out. That should be a win, maybe. And then at the Cowboys at the end of the year. I mean, Commanders could finish with 10, 11 wins. Yeah, I was completely wrong on them. And like I said, I'll own up to it. I will own up to it. I was not familiar with Jaden Daniels' game, even though it was Mariota who played yesterday. But yeah, they look good. They look good. But yeah, let me know what you guys think though about this game. What were some of your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. We're going to take one final break here. When we come back, we will talk about the NFC West. We'll kind of go over that division, and how it's close. It's close. Every team except for the Niners won. Cardinals picking up a win last night. yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward, and with injuries and guys coming back from injury, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, this division definitely is different, looking different, and again, it could change next week. Things could be completely different next week, but for right now, yeah, it's pretty close. So we'll talk about it when we return from our last break of the show. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the NFC West. And it's pretty close. It's pretty close right now. You had 3 of the 4 teams within the division picking up wins this past week. The Cardinals winning last night. The Seahawks winning 34-14 over the Falcons. The Rams picking up a win against the Raiders. 49ers dropped the game against the Chiefs. So right now, as it currently stands, that division, you have the Seahawks in first at 4-3, the Cardinals at 3-4. They're technically in second place because they won that game over the Niners a couple weeks ago. Niners are 3-4, and then you got the Rams at 2-4. This division is very close, and you got to worry about the Niners because, again, after the win against the Seahawks, I thought, okay, maybe they're getting back on the right track. But then, that game against the Chiefs was a nightmare for them because you had Brandon Ayuk, he tore his ACL, and Deebo Samuel was hospitalized because he has pneumonia, and he had fluid in his lungs. It was bad. It's bad. George Kittle is apparently dealing with a foot sprain right now. It's just, and then defensively, they're missing Dre Greenlaw. It's just, and we know about Christian McCaffrey, who might be coming back possibly week 10, I saw. We'll see how true that is. But it's been one of those years for the Niners, and it's going eerily similar to how it went when they lost to the Chiefs the first time in the Super Bowl. Because if you remember, you go back to 2020, they got decimated with injuries. Everybody got hurt. Everybody. And they just were not able to recover. And it's looking like that again. Now, by no means is this season over at the moment. They're going to get Juwan Jennings back hopefully this week. Ricky Pearsall is going to have to step up. Maybe George Kittle still plays. We'll see. It's kind of day-to-day, it appears. But, they're going to have to figure it out. And we'll see. We'll also see what happens with Deebo. There's no timetable for his return. So, we'll have to keep an eye on that throughout the week. But, yeah, it's been a mess for the Niners right now. And, when you got the other teams in their division, you got the Rams who are supposedly getting Cooper Kupp back this week. He was a full participant in practice yesterday, so that means he's going to be coming back. And the Rams, are going to be looking like a better team with him. And, Puka Nacua, maybe comes back soon. And the Rams, they can make a run here if they get their guys back. And, you know, they're 2-4 right now. They're a game and a half back of the Seahawks for first place. So their season is not over yet. Cardinals picked up a win last night. Kyler didn't throw for a ton of yards, but they were able to get the win there. I still don't trust them, but, you know, they did beat the Niners. So right now they're in second place. And they pick up a win against the Seahawks. You know, things change. Seahawks, I mean, they have just been up and down. You know, I mean, they lose to the Giants at home. You know, but then, you know, you lose that game against the 49ers at home, and then, you know, you beat the Falcons on the road after it seemed like the Falcons had figured things out. So it's a weird division right now. And I still am going to say that the Niners figure it out and win this division just because they're going to get guys back. And I do think that they could at least tread water until they can get healthy. But the problem is, it's just, you know, when you get guys back, then more guys get hurt. You know, it's definitely concerning. Definitely concerning. And even, you know, throughout this season, they just have not looked like the same team that we saw that made it to the Super Bowl. You know, I mean, they lost to the Vikings on the road. They had a problem in that game. You lose to the Cardinals at home. You know, they had their opportunities against the Chiefs. You know, Patrick Mahomes did not throw for a ton of yards, but, you know, the Chiefs' running game was effective, and Brock Purdy turned the ball over, something that he does not normally do. He just doesn't. He doesn't turn the ball over, but he did in that game. And he's got to limit the turnovers, and I just think, I mean, look, you're going up against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs right now are the best team in football. I know the Ravens last night were very impressive, but the Chiefs beat them earlier this year. And someone's got to knock them off. And so far, nobody has. But the Ravens are right there. And, again, there's not a lot of teams that can make the 49ers when they're right look like how they did on Sunday. The Chiefs are one of them, and the Ravens last year on Christmas. That's really how I looked at that game. That game was basically like the game Brock Purdy played on Christmas against the Ravens last year. And those are two of the best teams in the NFL. Two good defenses, you know, two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, it's... And I think Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. But there's some limitations with him. You know, you see Brock Purdy and him missing his weapons, and you see Mahomes and what the Chiefs are going through right now. Chiefs still were able to find a way to win. And that's because Patrick Mahomes is a generational talent. I don't think Brock Purdy is a generational talent. But Brock Purdy can win you games. But yeah, the Niners just have a lot of problems right now. And again, if they don't get it figured out, I mean, look, they already lost to the Cardinals, and they also lost to the Rams too. Those are two games that they should have won, but they didn't. And that essentially is giving the Cardinals and the Rams life here in this division. And imagine if the Seahawks would have beat them. They'd be 0-3 in divisional games so far this year. So they got to figure it out. They got the bye week coming up after this game against the Cowboys, which, you know, the 49ers were always in a different class than the Cowboys. I mean, that's really how it's been the last few years, but this game could definitely be close because the Niners are not the same team that, you know, destroyed them on that Sunday night last year. They're not. I mean, at least if you could get Debo back for this game, which I think that right now looks like a long shot. I mean, at least if you have Kittle. Kittle had 3 touchdowns in that game last year. And you could run the football against the Cowboys, and you get Juwan Jennings back. I mean, I still think the Niners should win the game. But we'll see. You know, you lose this game against the Cowboys, I mean, then you're really in trouble. So, they just got to get healthy. I mean, a lot of the guys should be able to come back. The only one that you're not going to get back is Brandon Ayuk, and he wasn't really doing much to begin with. It's just crazy after all that back and forth between the Niners and Ayuk. Ayuk's season ends this past week. But I think Ian Rappaport brought it up. I think that's what I was tuning into NFL Network, and I think that's and he was talking, and he said this is why players try to get this new deal right away, because they want that security in case something like this happens. Because if Brandon Ayuk doesn't get his new contract, well then, what happens with this injury? He at least has his contract. So, but yeah, just after all that, the fact that, Ayuk's season ends like that is just horrible. But he wasn't really having a great season to begin with. So, but hopefully, he bounces back and he comes back strong next year. It's just unfortunate. But yeah, and then, for the Rams, talking about them, they get their 2 top wide receivers back. They're a different team. And you got Sean McVay, you got Matthew Stafford. They've been keeping this team kind of afloat. Now they have 2 wins on the year. They got the Vikings coming up on Thursday. That's going to be a very tough game. But you win that, all of a sudden, their season's really back on. Seahawks, they're dealing with some injuries on the defense, and DK Metcalf, he might be week to week. He suffered I believe, a knee injury. So, we'll see, how long he's out, if he's out at all. That hurts the Seahawks. But right now they're in first place. Cardinals, they picked up a win, although, the defense did play well for them. They held the Chargers out of the end zone. Justin Herbert did throw for over 300 yards. But, the Cardinals, their season is by no means over, even though I kind of declared that, they'll win more games with Kyler this year, but I don't really expect them to make the playoffs. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, this division. I think if the Niners, get their act together, they're going to ultimately win this division. But they're not going to be the top team in the NFC. They are not going to have home field advantage, which, that plays a big role. So they just got to get right, and we'll see. But it has not been it's not been a good stretch of games for them. Just when you thought maybe they figured it out, they didn't. So we'll see what happens on Sunday when they take on the Cowboys. The Cardinals, they take on the Dolphins. The Rams, like I said, they take on the Vikings on Thursday, and then the Seahawks, they will be playing against the Buffalo Bills at home. That should be an interesting game. But yeah, they started off 3-0, then they lost their last 3, and then they beat the Falcons. So are they going to go on another 3-game winning streak? Are they going to go 3 wins, 3 losses, 3 wins, 3 losses? Is that what's going to happen? We'll see. But yeah, for the Seahawks, they got the Bills, they got the Rams, then they got the bye, then they got the 49ers out of the bye. They got the Cardinals twice, the Jets in between the 2 Cardinals games, the Packers, the Vikings, the Bears, and the Rams. So yeah, they got some tough games coming up on the schedule. For the Niners, they take on the Cowboys in the bye week. Then they take on the Buccaneers, the Seahawks, the Packers, the Bills, the Bears, the Rams, the Dolphins with Tua, who could be coming back this week, actually. The Lions, and then the Cardinals. So they got a tough schedule. Cardinals schedule, they got the Dolphins, the Bears, the Jets, the bye week, the Seahawks twice, the Vikings in between that, the Patriots, the Panthers, the Rams, the 49ers. And then the Rams, they have the Vikings, Seahawks, Dolphins, Patriots, Eagles, Saints, Bills, 49ers, Jets, Cardinals, Seahawks. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But, yeah, let me know what you guys think, though. Who do you think ultimately wins this division? I'm still going to say the 49ers, but don't feel great about it right now. So with that is all the time that we have for today. Definitely ran a little bit longer than usual, but anyways, appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows. Give the other shows some love. Make sure to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to the video. Greatly appreciated. And until next time, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Mm-hmm.
I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't that great. I don't wanna go to